Hello, and welcome everyone to the second episode in our new B2B pipeline growth series. My name is Iyer. I'm here uh, with Kwanzoo, and I'm pleased to welcome a good friend, a long time colleague, and a customer, and so forth, Kevin Cancilla.
Thanks, Monty.
Kevin, how are you today? And thank you for joining.
Hi, Monty. Thanks, and good day to our audience. So thrilled to be here, talking about pipeline growth, one of my favorite subjects, of course,
Yeah.
near and dear to my heart. So, a little bit about me, Kevin Cancilla, global technology leader with 15 years experience in the B2B space. From on-prem days to now SaaS. At the end of the day, I really think of myself as a growth marketer focused on ARR. It's really the only three-letter acronym in marketing that matters.
Yeah.
I'm a native of Silicon Valley, worked at a variety of startups and larger companies, including Adobe, where
Yeah.
actually I learned a lot and what I wanted to focus on, and that's really in the startup realm. Through my career, had three exits and looking forward to the fourth. So with
Yeah.
that, looking forward to the conversation with you, Monty.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. And let me just give our audience and listeners, a little bit of an overview of how we've been thinking about this B2B pipeline growth series of webinar, as we call it LinkedIn live sessions that will be
Yes.
turned into video assets again, available on our YouTube channel and so forth. Essentially, the way we think about it, Kevin, is this is so fundamental, right, and core to B2B companies. It's all about growing the pipeline, and then we think of it as there are certain key folks across marketing and sales who need to be, who play key roles. I mean, the head of growth, head of demand gen at a B2B company, the head of inside sales has a critical role, and then of course RevOps these days, which is marketing ops, sales ops, and the revenue operations function. The team really needs to support both of these folks, and what we are trying to do at our organization at Kwanzoo certainly is we want to make all of these folks heroes in their organizations. And so we really are centralizing our focus around pipeline growth. And so there's a lot of discussion that we can have around that, around what the current set of technologies are, approaches, the processes, what does it take to really make it happen, right? And where the industry is, where the technology is moving, where companies, right, the providers, tech vendors, tools providers, the role of data, content, programs. I mean, it's funny. I was actually on a hike or a walk the other day with a B2B SaaS CEO, and we were having an interesting discussion around how marketing in general, Kevin, I'm sure you agree, right, has gotten so vast, so complex.
Yes.
And so there's so much of expectations on all of us, right, including the CMO and the folks in the demand gen growth, even those roles on down. So that's a whole other discussion. But again, back to this series of podcasts that we're trying to, or video casts, as we're calling it, or LinkedIn live sessions, it's all been about having that interesting discussion dialogue with folks, real world. They have a lot of real world experience to bring in, and hopefully share some of their learnings, insights, tips, best practices with our audience, Kevin. And so the structure of today's discussion is about 20-25 minutes or so. It'll be a discussion. We certainly want to see if, as folks in the audience come in with their messages for us, we can get into a conversation with them as well.
Sounds good.
Um, so the thing is, I think the agenda topics, Kevin, we have is all the way from, we certainly want to dive deeper into your journey at some of your recent companies. We certainly want to then move on, and I'll be asking a series of questions around your experience building pipeline, driving growth. We'll get into what is broken, right, in terms of what we see as broken pipeline, broken process, some of the critical challenges at B2B companies today. Wanted to then get into tactics, what has worked in the past. What do you think has changed as you look back at the past few years? What do you think we need to do, just going forward, right? Um, and then certainly we can get into a discussion around some of the newer tactics, newer strategies, newer things that seem to be resonating with folks, which is actually working. It's starting to get proven out there. I think that could be an interesting dialogue. And I thought we could wrap up this session with, whatever, how can we have a session without a little bit of talk about AI and Gen AI, right? And so, what's real about it? How close is it? What do you see? Your take on where do you think it's going to
Exploding.
impact marketing, B2B marketing, sales, pipeline growth, and so on. So that's kind of the overall outline of things, Kevin. But with that, let me kind of get this going with just opening out to you to tell us a little bit about your journey as a growth leader, growth marketer across some of your recent organizations. And I remember when you and I first met was when you were back at Vindicia. Maybe
Right.
you could start.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's definitely a throwback. I remember, thanks, Monty, for the setup and the context for the audience here. And yes, please, we welcome your questions. Vindicia was a unique story for sure. When I joined back, I think it was, I don't know, 2014, 2015. I have to look back. But yeah, it was essentially an environment. They're a subscription management company. Monetizing your subscriptions is Vindicia at the core, later acquired by Amdocs. When I first joined, to help build out the marketing infrastructure within the VP of marketing, British Schultz, fantastic lady, just so experienced, but put it in my hands to build out the infrastructure, start, really our first motion in ABM. We were in the low teens. We grew that business from the low teens ARR back then till north of 45 million during my tenure, ultimately in acquisition with Amdocs. But if I had to pause and say, how do we begin the journey? I could double click on that if you like, Monty.
Yeah. We'll certainly get into double clicking on that in the next step, but maybe you can continue and give us your career trajectory, right? So you did Vindicia, you took it from the teens to 40 million plus, and yeah, please continue.
That's right. And it was quite the journey, building out the team. We had initially, there's a couple of us, we grew it to 6. As most companies today, that business development rep, the sales development rep is such an integral part of any marketing sales motion in my view. And it's really the interlock of success. I know we'll double click on that as well. Yeah. But ultimately, we had to build out the systems. All the infrastructure was not in place. And so we looked to you. We looked to, our friends over at WebEx back in the day and pulled in BrightTalk and all the different components. LinkedIn Sales Navigator was a key piece. Of course, like many shops, we are a Salesforce Marketo business. But ultimately, we built the whole ecosystem. And it began with some of the core tenets you would expect. And I could drill into those if you like, but let's see where you want to take the conversation.
Fair enough. And then I think from there, your next, interesting career journey was with Unravel Data, where we had to work together again.
Unravel is an incredible opportunity, and they're growing successfully. I think back in the early days, it was in the sub 2 million, growing that to north of 20 million, and continued to flourish and grow across all sectors globally. And Unravel's a unique story, in data observability space, managing data pipelines. There's a lot of players in there, but they're definitely creating their wedge and forging ahead. There's a lot that we had to instrument there. Again, setting up the ABM systems, all the different integral parts were crucial. And I can get into my philosophy and how things worked and how I'd recommend it for any company looking to deploy a pipeline growth strategy.
Yeah. I think both. I think what's very interesting, certainly as I listen to you, Kevin, is, the Unravel, you took it from, as you said, low single digits millions all the way to, as you said, to 20 million plus. That's a trajectory that many B2B SaaS companies, right? They're trying to figure out how to hit those early stage growth levers, and make it actually repeatable, scalable, to be able to, again, I've heard this metric that many people talk about, which is for every dollar in sales and marketing, can you get $1 in incremental, right? ARR.
You want more. You absolutely want more than that, not a one-to-one.
More than that, but at least as a baseline, right? And
that's right.
The reality is, even that's becoming a struggle for many companies now to even hit those numbers, because the way that the industry is changing, people, but the buyers are changing, right? B2B professionals, or what they expect, right? In terms of the marketing that they receive into their inboxes is changing. But
that's right. And with your you have such
Right.
great client experience, so you're hearing it firsthand as well from the other side, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the maybe you can why don't we tackle this in a couple of different ways? As I said, we want to get into next year experiences, growing pipeline revenue,
Sure.
and so to drill down, double click on that, it's really about your approach, your, as you said, your planning process as you go
Yeah.
through the year, as you land at a company. I'm also curious about, how do you even, as a new growth leader going into a brand new company in a brand new space, how do you get your head around, what is it you need to know, right, to make
Right.
an impact? You went from Vindicia, which is subscription billing software, over here to observability. You went from selling to digital people and certain kind of persona, and then here you're selling to different persona in IT, right, and
Yeah.
technical. So I think that'd
Absolutely.
be interesting for people to hear from you, which is, what was the process as you went in, and then how did you kind of get an assessment of your the
Yeah.
technology tools, staff, assets that you had at your disposal, and then as I said, what do you think went well? What lessons did you learn? And then how did you kind of apply those lessons, right, in your growth journey in each of those organizations?
Yes.
Maybe you could hit the smaller one, the 2 to 20 first, and then we can talk about the what was different, right, going from the teens to the 40 plus, because they're a little
Yeah.
bit different. Of course, the timing also matters, right, because technology is continuing
That's
to
a key.
evolve. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but with that, yeah, Kevin, back to you.
Sure. Thanks, Monty. Yeah, I think first and foremost, there's always the common sense things that are going to be naturally where you begin.
Yeah.
What's the position of the company? We have a clear category that we're going to sell into. What's the sales collaboration? Are we working hand in hand? Are you thinking about the complete ecosystem? What systems and technology are in place today? What's working? What's not working? So obviously, there is the natural assessment of things when you come in any organization. Um, Whether it's Unravel or Vindicia, in both cases, it was really let's build it out, and specifically at Vindicia, yeah, it's really it was a product marketing exercise first and foremost because we wanted to be more synonymous and known in the over the top, streaming media business, and so first and foremost, you had to go on that mission work to establish your positioning, get clear, definition and of the use cases you're going to go after. We talk about the ideal client profile or prospect, your ICP, but there's so many different selling scenarios. And so you got to make sure you have that unique ICP tailored. And then you need to think about what journey, how you're going to move and progress that ICP through the persona through those various stages. And so for me, it's always about positioning, and the messaging comes first, thinking about the product marketing and fit within the category, and then really, make sure that you have all the sales enablement in play. And so, it really is that laundry list of things you have to get tucked in. And then, it's going to absolutely require sales collaboration. So if they're not bought into the model, and if they're not willing to fail fast and test, then you can't succeed together. The sales collaboration is key. I think in the early days, it was more of a marketing led, even though whether it's pipeline growth or ABM was more marketing led. And now it's clear that you can't succeed one without the other. It really is more of a company motion now when you think about even customer success. And so for my philosophy, it's a complete ecosystem. There are no half measures. You need to think about positioning to, to clearly establish your where you want to plant your flag. Then you got to have those plays tailored, so sales can go out and engage. And you want that interlock across the organization. It's all about driving the ARR. And so, is that through direct or indirect? Is it partner motion? And then, of course, the integrated component, like we touched on earlier, is having the BDRs or SDRs at the center of everything. And so they really are the first line of offense. And they're really, if you think about them more as an analyst, and that's how I would coach and train SDRs that I've managed to be more of an analyst and, detective, as opposed to just trying to set a meeting. And so, as you know, back in the early other days, when you think about, when you can do personalized marketing, that one-to-one, that's when you can actually excel and penetrate. As we know, all the prospects we're going after in the tech business, they're inundated by so many different messages. And so how do you create that uniqueness? So we could touch on that, but I mean, at the end, you want to have that, measure and report out and have high visibility across the organization. So they're seeing the plays in motion, and there's no surprises. If you're collaborating with sales and they're, interlocked, then you're succeeding together, and you're also learning where you have those failure points. And then obviously, so you can fortify and adjust and go. At the end of the day, it's, the pipeline growth motion is key. And so I'll pause there to let you take it from there, Monty, and share some of your experiences.
So quick follow-up on that is, was there anything, that you found was different, what you had to do early stage growth at Unravel versus, a little bit of a teens to 40 plus growth at Indicia? What were the key differences, Kevin, in those two worlds?
Some of the key things were, first and foremost, it was having a pod or an account team moving as one. And so at Vindicia, that BDR is actually, business development members, actually receive compensation for deals closed, not just booking a meeting, right? It's too simplistic to say book a meeting. And so they were part of really that sales movement. And I think that's what, won the day. And then unlike some other companies where, it's more, pure comp based, but having them tied to the success of a deal closed, as opposed to just trying to stuff, leads in. That was probably one of the key things. And that the compensation, and I recommend this for any organization, look at the compensation of whether it's the account executives or the BDRs and the whole selling team. As you know, compensation drives behavior. Behavior will drive action, right? And so, and hopefully that action drives the right outcome you're looking for.
Got it. So you saw some differences in how that was handled in this early stage company versus later stage company. I know many early stage companies are super, maybe everybody is, but more so they are, right? They want to get those appointments, get those meetings. They're trying to figure out how to, have those strategies that actually can get them those meetings. The other interesting comment you just made was around getting your SDRs, BDRs to think like detectives, think like analysts, as opposed to just, brute force, right, tactics. So my follow-up question is, let's talk about GTM and B2B sales and marketing, and pipeline development strategies, growth strategies. How has that changed as you look back at the last, say, 5, 6, 8, 10 years, right? As you know, ABM became this new buzzword, a new thing that came along, right? And I would say, looking back 7, 8 years, right? 2015, 2016. And I remember the first Vindicia campaign we did for you was around account-based advertising programs back in 2016, 2017, that at Vindicia.
That's right.
So the world has evolved quite a bit. So what do you think has changed in terms of, how companies are changed in terms of, how they go about doing their growth tactics? And then are there tactics that used to work that don't work as well now? Maybe people have to rethink, redo. And then, I want to get into this discussion, then we'll follow that up with a conversation around the broken process, broken pipeline.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, I think you said 2014 or 2015. I remember, it was 2017 or 2018 where Gartner, they threw out in classic Gartner fashion, that Gartner predicts that 75% of B2B technology service providers, I think it was with more than 10 million in revenue, will adopt an ABM platform as their primary marketing tool or model. And that was true back then, right? And I think it's so important still today. The biggest change I see is that in the days before, early on in ABM and pipeline growth, there was a lot of ad serving and retargeting. But now it's so much more sophisticated, right? You think about, we're all consumers at the end of the day. I always talk about this in many conversations, whether you're buying a car, or shopping for a stereo system, whatever the case may be, we're consumers. And so first and foremost, what do consumers do? They're evaluating, they're reading, they're looking, they're assessing. And so for me, content is still key. You need to be relevant in the circles where your persona and prospect congregate. And so you want to have that credibility in those circles so you can offer insights and share information and ultimately be relevant to their journey. And so for me, being relevant, upstream is important. So when things move downstream, that you can catch that opportunity and move it forward. Um, the one of the biggest changes I've seen is that, as you say, in the early days, is that I don't know there was a lot of belief in the data, in the insights, because it was incomplete. I think we're going to get into that in a minute, but the data insights, how to turn the invisible prospect, if you will, into a visible suspect or opportunity, is really where you want to meet and intersect with that opportunity. And so sales or the SDRs can take action. I think the broken pipelines and the visibility and I just think the lack of belief in the data. I know that even back to the days of Tripwire, when I was presenting, you wanted to prove the case. It wasn't about, showing that marketing's right or driving marketing qualified leads or SQLs back in the day, but it's really about, do we believe in what we're producing and the systems and technology informing us to that reality? I think fast forward to present day, that absolutely is true. It's much easier to do, even with the challenges like Google, not making things visible. And, now you have to even work harder to get the anonymous into known light. So that's some of the initial things. I can get into more specifics, but what's your read on that, Lonnie?
Yeah, very much. I think, I do wanted to follow up on that. And I'll put up the first of our, just a couple of slides, right, as we continue on the dialogue and discussion here. And so here, what I was going to put up was this slide, which is, at least at a high level, I think of this as, call it, the broken, right, the broken pipeline, broken process, if you will.
All right.
So hopefully my screen is coming through, Kevin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is, I try to simplify it, to say the broken early stage pipeline at many B2B companies, right? Where you're putting in a lot of marketing program dollars and then you're getting some revenue out at the other end, right? But the breakdowns that at a high level we see are around the handoff from marketing to sales. And one is it's sales in SDR, BDRs, right? And inside sales constantly feel like they're not getting enough of the quote high quality leads, right? Real people, as you said, to pursue. Second is not enough in market account, right? Just the proper buying signals, rationalized, put together around here, the companies that they should really be going after. And the third is not enough qualified site traffic, right? When they do invest in paid programs and want to drive traffic back to their site, are they getting enough of the right people, right personas, right people coming back in? So at least this, I've tried to simplify the whole idea of a broken pipeline, but hope that makes sense, right? That's at least a place for us to start that discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're done, I want to jump in on that. I have a couple comments.
Yeah. No. That was it. I just want to show that real quick, and I think we're back to discussion.
There's, I said at the top of the call, the obvious things, common sense things really win the day, and so, as you ended on the quality pipeline and the visitors to the website, your website is really needs to be highly optimized, highly engaging and be credible and relevant. And so when you think about what's changed from a few years ago to present day, I mentioned earlier about consumers, they want to, self-serve and evaluate, right? So new, maybe a 3-letter acronym for some, but maybe not so new for others, but PLG, product-led growth, is a whole nother level of mission work, right? When it comes to self-serving and letting people find and evaluate and engage with the products or services you're offering on the web. And so, having both the direct sales model, along with the highly enabled sales team and all the different sales plays in motion, you got to have a mirror, in my view, equivalent to that. And whether it's product assist or product led, it doesn't have to be pure play product led, but that whole mindset is key. Because if you think like PLG, and you could exemplify that on the web, it's just going to give you more traction, more stickiness, and more credibility. And ultimately, I believe you'll earn the trust of that prospect when he or she wants to engage and make themselves known to you.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then I think then to continue along this path, right? So I guess the follow-up to this would be, what do you think is causing these pipeline breakdown? I know there's a lot of different tools where the pipelines are essentially being managed from, right, all the way from your website Do you have marketing automation type of tools to send out marketing emails? And they connect into your CRM systems. And
Yeah.
then from CRM, you've got other tools that come into play, sales execution tool like Sales Loft and Outreach. And then you're on to, revenue and forecasting tools and downstream tools, right, for account execs and so on. Um, I think you touched upon this a little bit earlier, right, which is just there's so much to kind of coordinate and manage across all these different tools and systems and all the points of breakdown along the way. Um, I
Yes.
mean, the job of RevOps people just seems to keep growing, more and more and more complex in every day, isn't it? With all these tools.
It is, and that complexity that can introduce, risk, and it could, you could have false positives and things like that. But I also think that the automation, the tools can help you give the insights that you need. As I said earlier, they're more sophisticated now, and they reveal more detail, and I believe they're more believable. And so, yeah, I think from whether it's account scoring or lead scoring, depending on where you're at in your journey. Some people still, like SQLs win the day. As other companies, it's all about marketing qualified accounts, right? My former mentor, Dan Schoenbaum, would say, MQLs are dead. It's really about, the PLG motion. And so, but what all this means is that you have to have the right systems in place to give you that visibility. I think that whether it's attribution, closed loop systems are so fundamental to just a marketing core baseline system. As an example, I use Marketo a lot, and so we have a lot of email campaigns because I'm trying to progress and move people on their journey, depending on what stage they're at, based on what intent data I have, the visibility I get to see. I'm able to trigger different actions, and I orchestrate those actions based on different systems in play, right? And so with that, it comes back to what's coming through, and do you have belief and credibility, in the progressions of those accounts. So for me, looking at, having really, you can call it the sales and marketing doctrine, or just an agreement on this is what an account looks like. These are the personas. These are how we're going to weight, engagement. And so building, the database hygiene is still so important as well, right? And so if you have, highly sophisticated database, then you can do your targeted marketing and serve the ads and different campaigns. I mean, this is something that really speaks to you, the things that you do, Monty, with your company, and maybe you could share some of the examples that you've experienced as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Kevin, because I was gonna call out, at least one approach that we've been developing and we have continue to roll out, certainly this year to several mid-market companies, to large enterprise mid-market companies, all the way to high-tech startups, and so on, and some divisions of enterprises, is something we've been starting to think about as a B2B pipeline development process that really simplifies and makes a coordination across all these existing go-to-market technology tech stack tools a lot easier in terms of coordinated pipeline dev process. I'll put up one slide just on that topic. We can have a quick maybe a chat about that.
Sure.
So let me share my screen once again and put this guy up. So real quick, and then let's see. I think I may have. I apologize. I may have accidentally gotten the that slide, closed. But let me. But let's continue the conversation. I'll bring that up, Kevin, momentarily. But
Okay.
why don't we talk next about? Yeah, specifically. Let me talk a little bit while I do that around, some of the innovations that certainly we we've seen, right, just looking at the more recent, right, 12 to 18 months.
Right.
So in terms of pipeline development, one thing I wanted to call out was one is this, we call it real buyer identity resolution, because I know you also call this out, right, which is
Right.
SDRs, BDRs, simply don't trust the data that
Yep.
and insights that are being delivered by some of the tools and systems. I think you also called out simply the hygiene, as you called it, of the data itself, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah,
yes,
and on that point, Mane, while you're bringing it up, the one thing that gives credibility is when you could bring those insights up within the tools they work within. And so
Right.
like we at Salesforce or other, connectors, but that really helps establish, I think the sales trust.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I did find it. So
Terrific.
let me just bring this guy up a little real quick. So here is the visual I just wanted to share as we kind of talk through what, how pipeline dev has changed. Is here. I hope you're able to see the screen now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what
right.
we're saying is
Blueprint.
you still need your call it the classic or the core infrastructure platforms
Yeah,
and tools. Be it your website content management system to run your website, to your marketing automation platform, right, to send out your marketing emails, to your CRM system, right, for your salespeople to action and use. And then there are SDR tools, right? We talked about, right, that for sending out those email cadences, and then you have your conversational intelligence tools, right, to make your dials and make your calls and so on and so forth, right? And then you have
right.
your account executives and relationship managers and customer success managers all being able to do their own outreach. Uh, so as you can see, there's so many touch points all along the way, as you mentioned, right? So we found that at least call it a backbone system, that connects all of these can be super valuable for companies, right?
Right.
You may have an ABM platform too, but from what we see in traditional ABM platforms, are good at certainly orchestrating programs and campaigns, but they aren't necessarily taking this rich and deep, call it pipeline development focus. So
Right.
they're not as invested, at least from what we've seen, right, around making the data actionable for your SDR, for your BDR, for your account executive. So there's a gap, if you will, right?
Love
There's a
that.
set of tools that marketing is using, the set of tools sales is using, and there's the world in between, right, connecting across all of them, and then having this backbone platform where you feed in all of this data. So as you can see, right, there's the master database of accounts and profiles. Then there's your audience database that's connected to these, where you can actually do targeted advertising. Um, and then there's all the external data coming in from your publishers, leads and intent, and then other external sources from which you get people's role changes, funding events, relationships, traffic data, G2 kind of data, intent data. The list goes on, but I'm sure this, I hopefully, Kevin, this will be enlightening for some of our audience, right? Because this is a complexity. Any
Yeah.
company, all the way from the ones you talked about, right, which is early, pipeline companies trying to drive pipeline, which are, funded startups, all the way to companies in their tens to 30 million, 40, 50 million, all the way to, of course, going into the mid market. The
Yeah.
complexity just goes to yet another level, Kevin. Uh,
Yeah.
your
I
take?
love this slide. This is
Yeah.
this is awesome. I'm kind of grinning because I think about you know, just whatever 8 years ago, I might have had like 4 or 5, maybe most 6 of those boxes on
Yeah.
that stack. And so I was talking with the CEO just last week, actually about this very topic, and I told him in the team I was speaking with, I think about it more as a marketing operations center, the mock now,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because it really is the level of sophistication. If you're familiar with NOCs, network operations centers, this is the marketing version of that, and so
Yeah.
it really is a beautiful thing, as they say, like a blueprint for success. There's a lot of components in there, but it also, I'm sure people are wondering, is like, that's a lot. Where can I begin? How can I be successful? And so, you
Yeah.
know, please enlighten us, Mani, on that topic.
Yeah, no, great point actually. So that's exactly why the way we certainly recommend customers is to start small and start with just one component to begin with, that you can maybe take in and consume and digest and get going. And the low hanging fruit that we found, we call that just simply buyer identity resolution on your website. So just start there, right?
Yeah.
So what we found is, companies have literally hundreds and even thousands of visitors that they are unable to, call it, unmask or de-anonymize. And then there's
Right.
this new technology available where you can actually connect from, and this, by the way, works for the US audience, for North America. And it's a large database, what we call an audience database of cookies. So from the cookies, you can actually map to the profile of the person. So you can get their entire information: first name, last name, company, email, title, LinkedIn URL, phone number, what have you. And so we've seen that there's a contribution of literally hundreds of thousands of net new buyers, net new leads. This is what our customers are calling them tier 3 leads. So tier 1 is, people filling out a request a demo form. Tier 2 is, somebody filling out a content syndication, whatever, a content download form or webinar registration form. But this is actually just connecting real people identity to your inbound traffic and then being able to tie it to the buyer journey and then giving that in a very consumable form in a simple web interface, right, for salespeople to action. Your external SDR teams can action it, right, in a web UI, or your sales teams can action it directly in the CRM. So there's an in CRM UI user interface. So, but the bottom line is giving them literally this level of insight that's actionable on their IAP, ICP accounts, and all the buyers with the right personas coming to those accounts, director level, VP level, C level, what have you. So this is a low-hanging thing, quick and easy to get started with. So to Kevin, to answer your question, this is what we typically tell customers. Just start there. Because that immediately boosts up solve that first problem we talked about, not enough high-quality leads. It kind of solves that problem. Then once you get this done, then you can go and try to tackle the next problem, which is not enough, call it in-market accounts.
Right.
And so there, the core problem, Kevin, we've seen is companies have all this different kind of intent data sources, but then salespeople don't know how to kind of put it together and action it in the right way and go after the right account first versus next. So we've come up with a way to unify, and we call it unified intent. So think of it as now you've got a way to combine all those different intent sources, and then you can action it in the right order across, and then have a combined rank or score, and then distribute it to your SDRs to action, right? And then so that's the second step, and then you can then step up from there and then do the outbound motion to bring in more traffic and then start measuring and then converting them to real people. So actually the thing with advertising, remember, Kevin, the way we did it, we could only bring this audience in, but now having this buyer resolution technology makes it doubly compelling. So if your LinkedIn leads cost you several $100s, which is pretty typical, we found that now there's ways to bring that cost way down, right? Like call it to 20 to 40%, of those LinkedIn lead costs, to get a conversion down on your website with programmatic advertising. Again, building your cookie-based audiences off of the same, audiences that you're trying to go after with an ICP perspective, Kevin.
I love it. It's tremendous. And the way I think about it, if I were to just my takeaway from that is that at the end of the day, with that first step in place, you're on your path to proving the ROI, showing visibility of the investments, how you're influencing the pipeline, how you can show the return on investment. You could have more depth on the target account coverage. You're able to show, how the sales cycle is moving. What's the duration, and really, and what sales cares about is the pipeline velocity. And so This is a way to illuminate these key things. So this is fantastic.
Yeah. So I think we have a few minutes left. So let me kind of get us towards the closing. Like I said, we already covered some of these newer tactics, and so on. I think next up is a few minutes to go. What is your take on this new, obviously a lot of interest in the market around AI, generative AI, how do you see that impacting B2B sales, B2B marketing, any early tools, technologies, tactics, use cases that you've seen that have kind of caught your interest, caught your eye? We'll kind of close with that, Kevin.
Sure. Yeah. So first, to our audience, this has been brought to you by generative AI. We are holograms here, and then so anyway. No, I think it's exploding. If you haven't, I'm sure everybody on the audience has already checked out ChatGPT, or looking at the different forms. I love the LinkedIn group at Generative AI. On Medium, there's a gentleman named Jerry. I'm going to mess up his last name. I'm going to say and I'll spell it Keska. He writes a lot of great articles, putting AI into practice for marketers. When you think about the startup companies, this is now an opportunity to give them greater lift and yield and velocity with their marketing. There's companies like Jasper that helps you basically propagate content at scale on a reasonable through AI. And for each Jasper like company out there, there's one for popping up websites, tracking. And so if you look at the generative AI forms, they're just, the tools come after one after the other. So, but there's a bit of caution. Everybody's running to the hills, right, to go find that gold in AI-driven technology. But as we know, as experienced marketers, you gotta, test its value. So test small, iterate, think about how you can use this to your advantage. But also, Gartner's all over it. They're saying, like, I think it's 75% of organizations will augment their AI with for sales books, playbooks, as well as marketing driven motions to help, build and grow pipelines. This is all coming together very quickly. And I'm looking at it for a different variety of reasons. Even I had some bit of fun on prior to today's session playing the tools, but yeah. So I don't know how you're seeing. I mean, all the platforms that I work with in the past, even like SEMrush, Marketo, Kwanzoo, and others, they all have built-in AI capabilities, and it just keeps exponentially getting more enhanced. And so, there's a bit of caution, but also an excitement in my voice. You can probably hear as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. And yeah, certainly from our perspective, we think we are in an interesting place with the platform that we built. As you know, it's a B2B pipeline growth platform connecting all these different systems. So we have visibility to a lot of the data across all these systems and tools. So one use case, one area we are certainly, think that there's potential huge value to be unlocked is, think of it as ad hoc insights, requests for insights from the CMO, the CRO, the head of growth, the head of demand gen, etc., which is not, quote, readily available, let's say, in any of their existing platforms or tools, but it really needs the connection of the data points across all these different systems.
Right.
And so not having to build, more, call it yet another dashboard, with yet another, heavy lift on interface, and call it, that is what we are most excited about. We're trying to obviously figure out specific use cases that we can deliver on, that's AI driven, that we can bring to customers, right? That's what we're focused on. We are aware of other tools, for example, doing simple things like customizing the SDR's, email subject line, or the SDR's email content, right? And as you said, you mentioned Jasper on the marketing content side. So I think the Gen AI applications around content and how to make content a little more actionable and personalized, that a lot of people are tackling that. But from what we've seen, the green field that we're seeing is around, hey, can you make decision support, right? Insights delivered to executive leadership, the C-level, all the way to operational leaders, right? That there's a huge need there for simple English language interfaces, as opposed to the current generation of dashboard, which are tablet menu driven, if you will.
Yeah. Right? I would just add that I said earlier about, you got to have that trust factor with your prospects, and you got to be serving up relevant content, have that credibility, and ultimately the relevance, and create stickiness.
Right.
So AI can help do that, but you have to be careful and validate that it is authentic.
Absolutely. The data cannot be a miss. It's got to be 100% trustable, believable. Otherwise, it's going to fail. So I agree. So with that, let's close on a positive note. The future is bright. Lots of good prospects. I think growth marketing, demand gen people are going to be in ever increasing demand, even with the current economic climate, tough times. I believe people are good at what they do, and I'm sure, Kevin, you'll agree with this, right? There's going to be a lot of interest around the opportunity is there for all of us. So
it's an incredible, I would say, the next gen frontier of digital marketing and all the ways that we could drive pipeline growth together.
Yeah. With that, we're going to close this out. Thank you, Kevin, for your time today. And
thank you, Mani, and thank you to your audience. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. The B2B Pipeline Growth Episode 2, Unlocking Pipeline Growth with Kevin Cancilla. We're wrapping it up, but we'll do this every 2 weeks. Please come join us for another episode with hopefully another great discussion on this similar topics with another great leader, be a growth leader, be an inside sales leader, or RevOps leader. Thanks again, Kevin. Have a good day.
Thanks, Mani. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.